the first, the, um, the first thing to do would be to go over who we want on the board. And I thought in general, if we can come to a decision about various aspects of this board, tentative decisions, then when we finish, we can sort of go back over and vote on whether we want to officially make it that way. Then I'll send the proposal to Michael and see if he wants any structural changes in the proposal. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So I think at the last time we agreed, or we talked about, and just stop me if I'm making a mistake here, that highway, in particular Paul, would be on, that the tree warden would be on, that one or two members from the BIA would be on, a member of the planning board, an arborist, an architect, open space, and somebody from the public. Is that correct? All
I
right.
might just want to clarify a landscape architect. That's sort of what we were talking about.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yep. Yeah, gotcha. Yep. Right.
I mean, I know it might be implied, but if we wouldn't want to publicize
Right,
that and have
yeah.
like my husband, who's an actual architect, join,
Gotcha.
who knows nothing about trees and plants.
Well, okay, now my question to all of you, and by the way, when I say question or make suggestions, it's an actual question. I'm not trying to influence people. You think this is too large of a board? Or
Can
should
I
we have a core board with advisors that we can go to at some point?
Can I ask a question? Did you say arborist?
I did,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that was the other, sorry, Ray, that was the one other thing that I was thinking about with that list, is whether one of the requirements for the tree warden will be to be an arborist or not. Because if the tree warden is an arborist, then
You know,
that could help simplify by one person overall. Unless there's a member of the public who is also an arborist or
well,
something like that. Couldn't hurt. That's the most important role, but I'm just checking.
that's a good point, but is it potentially possible that we may not be able to get an arborist tree warden? In other words, that Bill is our tree warden. I don't, Shirley, do you know, is he officially an arborist?
No,
Okay.
not.
So, well, I guess what I'm thinking of, and again, I'm just throwing this out, if we have, say, a core members that would vote as a board, in other words, majority vote to make decisions, could we not have, say, the landscape architect, the arborists, maybe one or two others as advisors that we can call on and not voting members of the board? I'm just throwing this out, whether you, Shirley?
What's the reason? I know that you believe that a smaller committee is more efficient, but as I see the role evolving, I have a feeling that there are going to be enough segments of responsibility for the members of the committee that a larger committee might be able to put a member in each of these segments. For instance, I see education as one segment of this tree board.
Yep.
That might be somebody's responsibility who is one of the 5 or 8 or whatever to sort of marshal that group. And if they need extra help on that or outside experience, whatever. I see, for instance, the role of the tree warden. I would like to see that become an official paid position, and it might then have to come under a certain department. Or alone, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm not worried about the size of the committee right now because I think as we develop what the responsibilities of this committee are going to be or their powers, they may well be divided up amongst these various functions of the committee.
Well, let me throw out, Mike, it's sort of a, maybe not a major concern, but if we are an official board, we vote as an official board, which means majority decisions. If we have a board made up of 8 to 10 people, are we going to get a quorum all the time to vote? That's my concern.
Mhm.
In other words, if we have a landscape architect and an arborist, are they going to be available for meetings all the time? I'm just logistically, that's, I guess, my concern.
I hear you.
And even probably somebody like Paul, I mean, he will be important, but will he be available? You know, I don't know. I'm open. I seriously am. If you want to keep it this way, that's fine with me. I'm just showing you, I'm just telling you my concern.
I would opt to keep it this way for the time being until we get further involved in
Okay.
what the responsibilities and so on are going to be. And then perhaps also, you know, how are we fitting in? Will there be a tree warden who will be a town employee, for instance?
Well,
This is
I
just a
think
volunteer position.
realistically, Shirley, I think by the time we get this approved, we probably will not have a full-time tree warden or paid tree warden. I think that's coming, but may not be in the process of putting this together. All right, so again, let me just go through this again. We have on the tree board, tentatively, we're saying highway, a tree warden, BIA. Do you want one or two members of BIA?
Well, right now, I don't think it matters. I would say, why don't we go with the one member
Okay.
for the time being?
Okay. And we have planning board. See, here's another one. You know, planning board voted me as the liaison between planning board and the. Yeah, okay. Let's leave it for now. An arborist, a landscape architect, somebody from open space, and somebody from the public. So that's 3, 6, 8, possibly 9 people on the board. Okay, for now, we'll leave that as the tentative board makeup, okay? Problems?
I've got
Okay.
8.
What?
I've got an 8. I carry 8 people.
I have 8, but if you add another BIA, it'd be 2, it'd be 9.
Okay.
Okay, whatever. All right. All right. Did you get the thing I sent you on the attachment on proposal?
Yes.
Yeah, I got it. I just threw out sort of an introduction and some responsibilities of the board. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but I think that's what we should probably spend time on right now.
Mhm.
And let me just read you, and I don't know how to share a screen, so don't, I'm not gonna even try. I just wrote as to the board that the Bridgewater Tree Committee, or board, I guess, I don't know, was formed to develop a comprehensive tree management program for the town of Bridgewater's public trees. And by the way, we are dealing with public trees. We're not talking about trees on private land. Okay, all right. Specifically, the board will work with town officials, town boards, and the general public to promote activities that manage all existing and new trees. Such activities include, but are limited to, and then I list the following things. If somebody wants to take that sort of, I took that from, I just compiled, looked at other boards and just sort of threw something together and rewrite that into a better format and add or subtract, feel free to, okay. And then I listed 10 things. 1, perform tree inventories. I think that's sort of a general agreement, right? Shirley?
Yeah, I think it is. But the question is that the responsibility of the board, or are we going to go out and seek someone who will do an inventory of the town? Because that's a pretty comprehensive job.
All right, you know better than I do. What do you think? What do you think?
I would like to see, and I tried without success, of seeing if the university might get involved in something like that. It might be a work study program, or it might be an internship for someone in one of the departments. And I left a message with one or two of our faculty members to see if they could drum up something, and I haven't gotten anything back from them yet.
Well, maybe that should be reworded then, Shirley, so it implies that the tree board will how should I put it?
Could say oversee a tree inventory.
Okay, what you're saying is a tree inventory, a tree board would not be qualified to do it, right?
I don't think so.
Okay,
It could be something that an arborist could do by all means, or it could be even a landscape architect or even the tree warden, depending on what their qualifications are.
okay, what's a better term? How do you, what do you want to say? Perform, or to oversee tree inventories?
I would think.
Just, is that good enough?
Sure.
Okay, oversee. Okay. Number 2 says encourage a long-term health of Bridgewater's, it should be Bridgewater's public trees, promoting native tree species. What do you say, Shirley? You know better than I do.
Yeah, I think there are some things that we might group together here. The long-term health of public trees might be something that we would include under an educational part of our responsibility. And it would include not only the promoting of native species, but perhaps recommending for certain locations, certain kinds of trees. For instance, I think under street wiring, we might look for a certain limit to the height of what that tree might achieve by the time it's full grown, and not have a maple tree that's going to be chopped up because it's getting into the way of the wires, but maybe have a crabapple tree that's going to grow but be below the wires, something like that. So I'm looking at encourage the long-term health as maybe something that would be included in an educational program.
Yeah, but the only, when I think of the word educational, I'm thinking more of the general public, not specifically the present town trees where the town boards would have. In other words, when I wrote that, I'm thinking of if, say, we decide because of mitigation money to plant the 20 new trees on Main Street,
All right.
that the tree board will encourage help native tree species be used on those. It wouldn't necessarily be education for the public. It'd be, that's what I'm trying to know.
Hear you. See, one of my concerns here is that there's more involved in just saying we're going to plant a tree here and plant a tree there. Promoting the long-term health of public trees. That's we have to start with a beginning with a good healthy tree, an appropriate tree. Here's an example. When I first moved into my house on Auburn Street, a very nice man who was at that time, I believe, the tree warden, came in and he said he was working to replace street trees or to put in street trees on properties. And I said I was only too happy to welcome, and he put in 2 maples. Bad. 2 maples that drop little flying seeds, pods, that end up becoming trees. And so every spring I go out and pull out these little maples that are growing. That species of maple should not have been planted in Bridgewater. It's native. However, it's a native that spreads. And we have other examples of that now, of trees that inadvertently drop their seeds in places we don't want them to be, and they become a nuisance to us.
All right, so how should we do this then, Shirley?
Well, I'm looking at the encourage the long-term health of Bridgewater public trees.
By the way, I just, as an aside, I took a lot of these from other town boards. I just reworded some of them, that's all.
Sure.
Can I ask a quick question?
Go ahead.
When we talk about Bridgewater town trees, are you talking about every single tree that's within the town layout? Or just like the Main Street trees and the common? Because if you're talking about every single, that means every single street's gonna have hundreds of trees that are town trees.
Good point. I assume it's every, but then again, we will probably ignore 98% of them.
But we do now, without a doubt.
So I get calls every day. I had one the other day on Crescent Street. Hi, I have some trees in my front yard. I believe they're town trees. They're dead. Can I have them removed? And we go out there and we kind of crudely measure it, kind of look at the assessing maps and say, all right, well, the layout of Crescent Street is 50 feet, there's, 25 feet of asphalt, so we know we got 25 feet, maybe 12 feet on either side we own, and we take responsibility for them. It's probably not the most accurate measure in the world, but it's close enough for what we have. So if we're talking about all those trees within the first 5 to 8 feet of the edge of every road, I mean, you're gonna be having years trying to figure this out.
Well, they wouldn't come up unless something, I mean, I did, back in the spring, we have a dead tree in front of our house. It's been dead for years. And I, at some point, just said, I know, I'm a little worried about it. And I happened to see a zoo and I said, I think we have a dead tree. And he came out and he measured that it was on town property. And, a few months later, you guys came and took that tree and a few others down. I think that's still, that's still viable. I mean, we still have to be able to deal with those trees. I mean, if it's on town property,
Right.
why not? You know what I mean? You're not,
I agree with what you're saying, Paul. My other concern would be there are a lot of properties that are on main streets, on town streets, town or state, but it's undeveloped land. Across from Ray, as an example, is a piece of a property that's underdeveloped. There's a lot of trees growing in there. It's a little forest. So where do you draw the line there? I think the line is there is a setback, and if it's within the setback, it's a town responsibility. If it's beyond the setback, it's not the town, it's the owner's responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, that's an understanding, but as far as like, we want to promote the health and the well-being of all town trees, you're really concentrating your efforts on street trees and things and, like the main street, the broad street, the common, some little park areas, stuff like that, is where your efforts are really going to be concentrated.
well, yeah, that I think that is the point of that line. Maybe it should be changed to be more specific.
I mean, I guess it's assumed, but
It is sort of assumed. I mean, I'm not talking about that we have to go into the forest and take care of a tree that died, even though it, part of the, across from me, on the right-hand side of our lot.
Where are you, Ray?
The whole, on Aldrich Road.
okay.
The whole street, most of the street is wooden on the other side, woods on the other side, but part of it is town-owned property. But there's woods there, so a triangular portion
Mhm.
that's town property. Now, I would assume we do nothing with that.
Yeah.
Well,
We
the
have gone
tree,
into some-
usually the tree inventory too will start with GIS, which will show where there's continuous canopy. So it could, the mapping could illustrate those areas that are in conservation and open space just as kind of like, canopy or whatnot, because there may be a few singular trees that are kind of like, more like street trees or more like, out in the open space in the kind of cleared areas of open space where, people park and things that we may want to count in the tree inventory. So, we would have to obviously define the scope, and it would even typically they even are defined by trees of a certain inch caliper or greater. Like any very, very small trees sometimes might not even show up, depending on, if you need to limit it based on budget or something to that effect. However, the flip side is you would want, if there was a newly planted tree, you need it to be tracked so you can make sure it is maintained in a database and, healthy and whatnot.
Okay, that's a good discussion point. Paul, I'm glad you brought that up because Nicole, you mentioned the inventory. My assumption of an inventory would be the street trees and things like that, not 4 acres of forest. Unless, I don't know, Shirley, you may know about what the inventory would encompass.
Well, I do think that we ought to focus, at least for this beginning part, on just town-owned, town street trees. Let's put it that way. And there are going to be tracts of land that the town may own and may be looking for somebody to develop, or somebody comes in and says, how about if we put the fire station here, for instance? Oh, good idea, but look at that forested land. Is it all now going to be part of a street tree inventory? I don't think so. but the trees along the front of that street tree line should be part of the inventory.
Does it matter? Can't we just leave it? We're talking about two different things here now, though. I mean, we're going back to tree inventory. I mean, does it matter that we specify what a tree inventory is in this? Can't we just say tree inventory? And decide when it actually takes place, decide on what's going to be looked at?
Mhm.
Okay, so let's skip the encourage long-term health of public trees. Maybe that should be reworded. Maybe Shirley, if you want to take a look at that, we can talk about it at the next meeting and maybe rewording that. Let's go on though.
Okay.
Work with the tree warden, highway superintendent, and the Bridgewater Improvement Association to spend any mitigation monies that are set aside for trees. I put that in specifically because we've already done that. I mean, we've already asked money for trees. Any problem with that? I hope not, because that's the whole idea behind this tree board.
I have just a question with the care and management. I hate to sound like, and Shirley probably knows what I'm gonna say, but I hate to sound like I don't want to help, because I do, but we just don't have the manpower. I mean, from the last time we talked, Shirley, 2 or 3 years ago when Ron was here, we're down even more.
Mhm.
And they've got to get a forestry department. I am not an expert on trees. I'm not trained in trees. I know how to cut them down and I can dig a hole. I don't know much about them.
Well, if you look at the number 10, Paul.
Yep, no, I know. I'm just as soon as I see it, it just maybe I had to speak up.
I know, but I think we have to. I mean, if say we have mitigation money right now, and if it's let me explain. When I suggest the mitigation for the flex building at the NIP and the mitigation for the building going up on Route 18,
Sure.
it was specifically stated in the approval that the mitigation was going to be for the planting of trees. And I did email back and forth with Michael about this and about the fact that maybe, and the bottom line is he said we could probably work it out so that money can be spent not just for trees, but it could be for, say, the caring of trees or something else. It doesn't have to be for the planting of trees. And what we'll do in the future, when we do ask for mitigation money, we can make it sure that we specify that it's not just planting trees. It could be money that would help you, Paul, in terms of even taking dead trees down or something like that. I can see even asking mitigation money, maybe even to help you get equipment, for servicing trees.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I won't jump ahead on that. I'll wait till we get to that, but
All right. Okay.
say when we get there.
Okay. So, and no, 3's okay then right now, right? Okay. 4, work with the tree warden, highway superintendent in matters that relate to the care management.
What is this? Is this a short, excuse me, Ray?
Yeah.
Is this short term just to take care of this year?
Yeah.
When you talk about the Improvement Association spending mitigation money, the superintendent of the highway, the Improvement Association, the tree warden, this is just for this year,
No,
forever.
forever. What's wrong?
Well, I think it should probably be, it should be somebody who comes in with, and it could be any member of this eventual tree board who would say, or maybe a committee of the tree board who would say, all right, for next year, we're going to plant X number of trees. Where should they be? Who's going to study where they're going to be, what kind they're going to be, how big they're going to be, and who's going to plant them, and who's going to maintain them, and so on. All of which we've kind of done in goodwill between the highway department and the BIA, but I don't think it's goodwill anymore. I think we really have to take this on as a town project,
I agree with
not
Shirley.
just the BIA and the highway department.
But this is, well, wait a minute then. What are you suggesting? This is just talking about mitigation money. That's all.
I know, but we're going to continue with this mitigation forever, I hope, as
We
long as
don't
there
know.
are.
I mean, we, 1 year we may get some money, the next 2 years we may get nothing. Although, I mean, again, the mitigation money we have now and it's coming in was a voluntary gift from the developer
Mhm,
because they were asked to give money.
mhm.
The new zoning, which hopefully we approve by the town council soon, does give the planning board specific powers to ask for mitigation, not necessarily just for trees, but
Good,
mitigation, period.
right.
So there's a possibility that we will continue to get money. It would most likely be with, a fairly large project. If somebody builds a 5-lot subdivision, there's probably going to be nothing. We're going to ask for no mitigation there. But if they come in with a solar field or a large building, then they disturb the land. Doesn't have to be trees. Why, we can ask for mitigation. Why not? And that mitigation may be used for a number of things. Maybe what you want to say that maybe, but do you want to change that where it says set aside for trees? Do you want to make it more open to include other things besides?
There are mixed messages here. I'm worried about 3 groups being in charge of mitigation money spent on trees. That's one concern. And that means the Improvement Association, the Highway Department, and the tree warden.
Surely that is the tree board, though.
Yeah, I think that's, well,
You see,
go ahead.
when we asked for the mitigation money 3 times we did, the intent was that the plantings would take place based on the recommendations from the BIA and the highway superintendent.
Mhm.
That's all. I mean, who else should be involved?
What about the arborist? If we have a member of the committee who's an arborist, why wouldn't the arborist be involved?
You could include that. I don't, that's not a problem with me. I don't,
Mhm.
Or we could simply say, how about if you just say number 3, that the tree board will work with the tree warden, so and so and so and so. In other words, they just give the responsibility to tree board, but they list specifically who we'll work with.
Why couldn't we just say mitigation money will be collected for the planting and maintenance of trees and not identify who is going to be doing the work of it, if you will, until we find out what this committee is going to be involved with?
I gotta tell you, I don't want Michael to decide.
Well, I don't think he is.
No, if you leave it
We
open,
can say that the committee, the tree board, if you will be responsible for the mitigation money for the planting and maintenance of trees.
okay, if you just say the tree board, yeah, okay, I'm fine with that.
Mhm.
Nicole, yeah. Paul, yeah, that's fine.
Would
Because the
removal
tree
fall
board
under
includes
maintenance?
people. I'm sorry, Paul.
Would tree removal fall under maintenance? Or should you add maintenance and removal? Because sometimes you might want to use the money to get rid of hazard trees.
For taking out trees as well as
Yeah.
maybe for trimming trees as
All
well.
right, well, let's start all over. On
That's
4,
where
how do you want to
that's where we
word
get
this
the
now?
maintenance. The word maintenance would cover those things.
So wait a minute, you want to scratch, Shirley, you want to scratch the first part and just say the
Tree
tree
board.
committee?
Whatever it's called, tree board, tree committee
Yeah,
will be responsible for mitigation monies for planting and maintaining trees. Does that make sense?
for the planting and maintaining trees. I hope somebody's writing this down too, because I don't write well.
Where is Josh?
I'm here, don't worry.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Because first of all, I don't take good notes. The second thing, I can't read them sometimes when I take them. All right, let's go on. There's 4, 2 general, work with the tree warden, highway superintendent, in manners that the tree board, in other words, will work with the tree warden, highway superintendent, in manners that relate to the care, management, and removal of public trees in town.
Does anybody else want to say in the removal of?
I'm sorry?
No, I'm sorry, I'm thinking out loud. I'm just.
Well, I'm hoping that we're going to have some sort of guidelines that will help us to determine any removal of trees. I'm hoping that, first of all, we'll be dealing with street trees or trees within the setback that's determined by the town, number one. And I think also the tree warden should determine when a tree is no longer viable. Wouldn't you think?
I do, if you plan on getting a new tree warden. Nothing against Bill, but he's just never around.
No, I understand. I'm laboring under the assumption that, and I think Bill is probably also under the assumption he's not going to be tree warden forever.
Well, I think considering the makeup of the town right now, I don't see a tree warden coming on board, paid tree warden this year.
I'm not saying it would be this year, but I'm thinking long-term now.
Yeah, but we have to have the some process to make a decision about removal of trees. And right now, why not the highway superintendent?
Well, I just don't want it written in so that it becomes a forever kind of thing.
How about highway superintendent or tree warden?
First of all, I really do think that the tree warden is the one who determines whether a tree is viable or not. Isn't that the case now? Wasn't that under his responsibility or her responsibility?
Yeah, I mean, we don't call him every time. I mean, if it's blatantly obvious that the tree's sick or dead or dying or got a
Right.
fall, I
Right.
don't really need to call him. I have had some trees that were questionable, especially if they're in more public places or around the common or
Yep.
something where I would definitely bring it up.
Mhm.
I talked to Mary Lee a couple weeks ago on one behind the memorial building. I think she talked to you all.
Yep.
So it's kind of at the discretion, really.
Paul, and in reality, who's making decisions for removal of trees? You or Bill or both?
90% of them I do.
I was going to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, but let's look at what the law says about the role of the tree warden. Because we're dealing now with, we've not had a viable tree warden who is really doing the jobs that are listed under the responsibilities of a tree warden. And Bill knows that, he'd be the first one to say that. So if it says in the state law, or if it says in our town regulations under tree warden, that they will be responsible for determining whether a tree is to be taken down or not, then that's what we should go with, unless we want to change it.
Yeah.
Whether we've got a tree warden here who is full-time, part-time, or in between. It's not for today that we're dealing with this, it's for the days to come.
I think in the future, if there was a forestry department again, they would probably supersede me in that. We
Sure,
would pass the reins to them.
sure.
But
And
if
if there
we-
were a forestry department, a tree warden would probably come in underneath that forestry department.
But surely I'm looking at realistically, if we don't have a tree warden, then we don't have an ability to cut those trees down.
Well, we do have a tree warden. His name is Bill Maltby. And until we have something else, somebody else, he's going to act as a tree warden. We're looking not just for today and tomorrow, we're looking at what are these, I'm hoping that these are the responsibilities to be put into the rules and regulations of this committee for perpetuity.
I think you have to put something in the absence of the tree warden because you're both making good points, but the problem today we have Bill, and the reality is Bill's not around a lot. So we
Mhm.
certainly can't wait 6 months for Bill to come home from Florida to look at a tree.
Sure.
So somebody has to take the responsibility in the absence of Bill in a reasonable amount of time. If he can't come look at it in a week or 10 days or whatever the case is,
Sure.
then somebody's gotta do something. Can't just
Yep.
wait around. And then moving forward, should you get a new tree warden, that would still cover it. That person would probably be here a lot more. So I think I would just add something where there's a backup.
How
Do
about
we
that?
still have the title of forestry department attached to your department, Paul?
That's $1 million question. I don't know. We
I'm
had,
gonna say we could use the term forestry department as an umbrella term that would cover the tree warden when and if we got a new one, or if we ever got a full-time one or whatever.
it was
And the
essentially
highway
dissolved.
department as well.
I thought it was kind of dissolved, and then we held the money for at least Victor's position. And then the money sat there for so long, and we had such a backlog of trees. We transferred the money into an account where we can use it to hire a private company to do takedowns.
Yep.
Supposedly, we can put the money back into a salary if we find someone, but I've never seen the job posted. I don't know if
Well,
you
we
have.
have to find out whether there is on the books a forestry department. If there is not, then we can't refer to a forestry department. I mean, it
You
has to-
really shouldn't have a town the size of Bridgewater without a forestry department.
I'm sorry?
Exactly.
Paul, I didn't hear you.
I said, you really shouldn't have a town the size of Bridgewater without a forestry department.
Exactly, no. Can you find out whether there is one? I mean, on the books, whether we actually, part of the highway department, there is a forestry department. I mean, if, you don't have to do it right now, but I mean, maybe just find out if one does exist, and then we can maybe word it in. Okay. Any problem with 5? Work with the town officials to seek grants concerning the preservation, maintenance of trees in the town. May never happen, but it's nice. I noticed towns have it in there. Nicole, you're.
I agree. I agree. I was thinking that too, in terms of funds, because it was clear about the mitigation funds, but I was thinking, there could be other funds at some point, whether, it is grant funds or even, setting up some sort of a way in which, donations could be made to the town to plant trees, in the name of someone that is
That's a
fairly
good idea.
common.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know, administratively what that takes to set up, but it's fairly common. So I think it might be fairly simple too. So we might just want to broaden what types of funds we are. We're helping to kind of coordinate the planting of trees under these different, sources of funding.
Could we
And-
just use that and as a broader term than grants?
Yeah.
And just say a town tree fund, for instance?
Mhm.
Work with the town officials to seek monies for a tree fund. And that would be donations, that could be assessments,
Grants, yeah.
developers,
Okay.
grants.
Yep, yeah, that's good. Maybe, Nicole, you can reword that?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Okay, that sounds good. Then I have 6, design suggested programs for the public and the planting and care of trees on private property. In other words, I was thinking there, maybe just on the web, on town website, that we suggest that certain trees be planted at certain times and so forth. I don't know, things like that.
I
In other words,
was,
goodwill for the public.
I was again looking at a component that would be educational, if you will.
Right, yeah.
And that would come in under that, so that we would have something that we could hand out to people if they're interested in planting trees. These are the
Yep.
kinds of trees that would be appropriate for a single family lot or a single house lot or something of this sort.
Yep.
These are where they should be planted, or this is the size it's going to be. You should stay away from invasive plants and so on and that sort.
Yep, exactly. That's all I was thinking.
Okay.
I think that would be promoting goodwill for town. It's not going to cost anything. Just put it on the website or pamphlet or something.
So what here under 6, what we could say is an educational program which will assist citizens in the planting and maintenance of trees on private property as one of the components of that. And then I have a list of other components that might be included in there.
Good. Yeah,
All right.
that's fine. Okay, 7. Work to promote Arbor Day, and Bridgewater recognizes a tree city. We no longer are. We have the signs up, but we're not. One of the requirements is a tree board, which we don't have. So I think it may be a long-term goal, but it should be in our thing.
Yes, I was just looking at the list of other communities that are part of it. We're definitely not listed there, but
Right.
we really should be given what other cities are listed. And there's a lot of, there's more grant opportunities through that. Once you're designated, they have many grants available through that program. And they have like a state coordinator who will work with you to help you. They help you fill out the application, first of all, but they also will help you with, anything under the process. And I wonder if we could get more educational materials from them to put on the website. Like they may help us. They may be a huge asset for the educational component and the grants.
That's excellent. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
One of the other 4 criteria though, is you need a tree. There's 4 criteria in addition to the tree board or department. You need a tree ordinance. So we'd have to see if those sections we have under the others, under the zoning and so on would count, or if it needs to be a standalone tree ordinance.
Yeah. I did look at it myself. I don't tell you the truth, I forgot, but
Okay,
I think, Nicole, that may be solved, because I believe Michael told me that once we give him this program, these responsibilities, and he okays it, that there will be an ordinance.
yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, so maybe that will meet the requirements of the tree board. But he did,
Yeah.
I know he mentioned ordinance. So
Okay,
okay.
and spending at least $2 per capita on urban forestry, I think that would be resolved if we can confirm that the highway department is technically the forestry department, and I'd imagine too, at least we could prove that $2 per capita is going towards your tree removal, tree maintenance. and
$2
things
per
like-
capita.
per, I guess that means per person in this town, so that would be,
$54,000.
yeah,
Well,
I
just get
think
more
the steady
mitigation.
income would be very helpful if we had a forestry department. If
Yeah.
they could ensure that there would be money to maintain equipment.
yeah,
In addition to maybe even purchasing, and who knows, maybe it'd pay for a tree warden, or I don't know what it would amount to, but.
Right.
steady
That's
income
true.
as-
that,
pay-
I wonder if that 54,000 would count, in terms of the salary for the tree warden and, some other funds that are related to urban forestry.
Okay.
Okay, so we could, and then we would have to celebrate Arbor Day. So that's the criteria.
Good.
Good.
All right. This was not my idea, but some people in town have suggested a tree farm. I think it may be a long shot in the near term, but we probably should consider, at least have it worded. So consider, not necessarily create,
Mhm.
consider it the creation. And the idea behind a tree farm is that we grow our own saplings and so forth for plantings, I guess. I mean, it wasn't in my mind originally, but Carlton brought it up, and I think somebody else did, regarding the idea of a tree farm. And he even looked around for sites, public property in town, he picked 3 sites that could be used as a tree farm. I don't know. I see no reason not to put it in there. It doesn't mean that we're gonna do it. And Paul will
I
have to
agree.
take care of everything, right, Paul?
No, I don't see any problem with it.
I'm joking. No.
I think it's way more cost effective than purchasing the trees when you want to plant them.
Yeah.
When because I know many campuses that I work on have this, that's how they replenish their trees.
Yeah.
They grow them on their own. They're super, inexpensive to get started as saplings.
Yeah, that's right.
I do think, however, that it broadens the scope of the job.
Yeah,
A tree farm means you've got to have somebody who's responsible for purchasing the seedlings, planting the seedlings, maintaining the seedlings, and that's a 365
Yeah. No,
day
there's-
job.
Absolutely right. But at least if I use the word consider, doesn't mean we're going to do it. So at least if there's a possibility then. Okay.
Mhm.
Advise the various boards that presently have regulations regarding trees. If you look at I think Jennifer sent out the stuff last week. You know, there are various boards, like the planning board does have tree regulations right now, and we can't override those. It's illegal to do so. I mean, the planning board is under the Subdivision Control Act, and we required in our rules and regs that, for instance, that I think it's every 40 feet in the subdivision, we have to plant it, developer has to plant a tree. So we're not going to be able to override that, but we should at least know what boards are doing in town in terms of trees and what the zoning says regarding trees. So that should be.
I think that in addition to knowing what the planning board is doing, I don't know if the Concom is doing anything or has any rules and regs, but any and all regulations that apply from various boards around the town should all be consolidated into one place, and we should know who has what jurisdiction over what. Nicole brought up a good point several months ago now, that a developer, let's say Mr. C, name to be unknown, wants to develop a piece of property on which there are 5 acres of trees. And so he knows he wants to do this down the road sometime, 10 years from now. So he clear cuts the property now with the understanding that he's going to develop it in 10 years or 5 years from now. And so he has bypassed the planning board because he's now going to propose that this project that he's got going is going to be on his lot that he clear cut it 5 years ago. And the planning board wouldn't allow that if you were to bring that lot to them as undeveloped with trees on it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, there is, and I apologize for not knowing the rules and regs clearly. There is, the planning board does have power over earth removal, which is rarely invoked. I know we did it once. If you move a large amount of.
But I think what Shirley's saying is they're gonna come to planning board
Yeah, I
saying,
know.
I've got a nice open lot, so
Yeah.
I don't have to, I'm not removing any trees that you need to worry about at all. And look, I'm planting, 10,
Right.
along the road.
I don't know. how to
When I
answer
took
that,
down 200 5 years ago.
though. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I know.
I think it's probably beyond the scope of the tree board. You probably need something in the zoning.
Well,
or-
but we need to know what's available and then where the holes are or where the leaks are that we need to fill. And this is an example of a possible leak.
Yeah, but remember, we started this out, we're talking public trees.
right.
It's not private.
But what happens if this guy 5 years later, after he's clear cut, decides he wants to sell the town on developing this property for a over 55 housing project
Why not?
or a senior living project?
What I'm saying, Shirley, is you probably we need a bylaw in the town that says something about clearing of trees.
Sure.
It's
But
not
we all
part of
have
the
to
tree.
know what those are so that we all operate with full knowledge of what they are. And therefore, if the planning board has a series of regs that deal with trees and Concam has another series that deal with trees, and then the tree board has another series that deal with trees, there may be contradictions that we need to know about and to avoid.
All right.
Well,
so-
somewhere down the road, would this be covered in the tree ordinance? Some of those odds and ends, nothing conflicting with the other regulations, but maybe there is an overall. Yeah, I guess it would have to start to get into private. I think we all agree we don't want to have to regulate somebody taking down one single tree, but there may be, some either tree of a certain caliber or clear cutting that I think are our big gaps, that we would potentially in the future want to consider on private property. We're not ready now, but.
I think this is beyond the scope of what we're talking about, a tree board, but it's important, obviously. Maybe,
Yeah.
let me try to ask Michael what he thinks, how this should proceed. Because I think it is important that what Shirley brought up is important that I can't see putting in the tree board's responsibility that we oversee the cutting of
Not that, I think that the sharing of information is important.
Yeah,
Somewhere we ought to have one composite list of all of the regulations that each of the committees in town, or each of the boards, or each of the whatever groups who has anything to do with tree regulations, we should be able to go to one place and find it.
yeah, I agree. Yeah. So well, what do you say? I mean, we can't put that into a responsibility. The town needs to do it though.
Mhm. Well, I suppose it could be a part of a tree inventory. Any large lots that have potential development possibilities to be developed in the future must do such and such, and that might be to save some of the trees so it's not clear cutted, or to have replacements, or to have money in mitigation.
How, like, what would the limit be? Like, say on South Street down towards the very end, by the pond, they just cleared, I don't know, I think they're putting 3 houses in there maybe. But they clear cut it. There isn't a stick of wood standing anymore.
Mhm.
Is that kind of something what you're talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think there's any rules or regs that we have right now that stop the clear cutting of it. I know when D'Amelia sold, the property off of Cherry Street, that the huge development there.
The
He,
preserve?
he sold it to a developer, and the plans that were submitted because of the recession in 2008, Deval Patrick, the legislature grandfathered all the approvals. The approvals normally are 2 years. It was just grandfathered, I don't know how many years. So when the developer wanted to actually start building, it came to the planning board. We had to sign off. We had it took 5 minutes. We could not do anything because of the fact that it was already approved. So, and extended because of the recession. I honestly don't know if any board or anybody in town has power to stop clear cutting, but that's worth looking into. That's very important. You're right, Shirley. Yeah. All right. I think 10 is obviously, you don't argue that, will you? Encourage the town to create a forestry department under the control of the highway department with a paid tree warden.
Mhm.
All right.
Depending on, well, I will say, depending on what level of a forestry department, some towns have a pretty big forestry department where they'll have their own forestry superintendent and workforce, and then they'd fall under the DPW. They wouldn't fall under the highway.
Mhm.
A
What
zoo
do you
will
think?
oversee that.
What do you think?
Well, ideally, the more they do is the less I have to worry about. But no,
Okay, so-
I think,
No, so would you suggest that we, instead of say under the control of highway, just simply say create the
so
forestry?
it was that way before. I don't
Okay,
think there was ever a forestry superintendent, but we weren't a DPW. We were just like highway forestry. That was it. When
Mhm.
they took on this new role as DPW, I don't know if we should research that a little bit more, if forestry is supposed to be a separate entity or if it's supposed to fall under our umbrella. It
well,
doesn't
just
matter.
remember, whatever we put down, it's gonna go to Michael, and it may go to the town attorney, so we may force to change certain things, that's okay.
Yeah, so I guess you could leave it for now.
Well, whatever we want, we can just, this is a wish list. I mean, Paul, you're saying that ideally you want to create a separate department?
I guess I don't know, I'm torn. I guess we have to do a little research to see what other communities do.
I think the size of the community has to be taken into consideration as well. And for the time being, I think we could just say, create a forestry department and not put under the jurisdiction.
That makes sense.
That can be developed if we feel that that's where
Yeah.
it should go, or if Michael feels that's where it should go, or whoever.
I agree.
That
Yeah,
makes
Is that
sense.
all right with you, Paul?
Yeah,
that makes sense, yeah. All right, did I leave anything out?
Yeah, I'm wondering if we should have a section that would be sort of entitled education. You know, the tree committee will be responsible for educating the population or citizens with regard to, and then we could list the kinds of things that we think should be included in there.
Okay, how about we can reword number 6 then,
Sure.
okay? And then put education in and list various things.
Sure. And I could give you a list of things if you want to now or later on, whichever.
Later, why don't we just, this is sort of our homework for the next meeting.
Sure.
Is there anything else, Nicole, that you can think of, for instance, that we should include here, Paul?
No, I think you did a nice job thus far.
I think it's a good start, Ray, and that as we continue with this, we may well want to broaden the list of responsibilities here.
Yeah, I agree.
Or you
I
can
agree.
meld or whatever.
This, again, this is our wish list, and I think, you know, as I alluded before, we have an opening to create this board. Michael is finally on board, and I think the town council is on board now too. So we can, I don't want to use the word ram it through, but if we can get it in the process anyway by early fall, I think we'll be in good shape. And we remember the goal is to have our proposal to Michael by the end of August. I think we can do that earlier. I don't see why we can't. I'm not sure. Unless you think of what else needs to be done. We need the board, with the structure of the board. We need the responsibilities of the board. I'm not sure what else, but
So here's another thing that we might consider adding. Who oversees the historic cemeteries of Bridgewater? As an example, the one in the corner of Summer and Plymouth Street. Who's in charge of the trees that are in that cemetery? The ones, there are 2 down here off of Auburn Street. They're all over the town. And I know that the highway department takes care of the maintenance of them, but who's in charge of, should there be trees removed? Should there be new trees planted and so on?
well, the ones that fall into the public trees.
We've always done the removal, you know,
Right,
more or less it's been if things are fell or storm damage.
right.
But you're
And we
right.
also have other, in addition to cemeteries, I'm looking at parks. We've got the park down there behind the fires, the police station. What about schools? Is there anybody who's responsible for the kind of trees, or is that the school committee? If so, that's another entity that may or may not have the same feelings about what trees should be or should not be planted. How about companies like the utility company here in town? They have a piece of property here in the center of town. Can they do what they want with trees on that piece of property? And there are things like that that I think are non-entities that we've never dealt with before, except that out of the goodness of their heart, the highway department has maintained them to some degree.
All right, let's do this. First of all, as I said, I think the first meeting, I'm not in favor of long meetings. I think beyond a certain time, people get tired and they want to get off the meeting.
Mhm.
So why don't we plan on another meeting, but let's first decide what we've done and what we need to work on for homework for the next meeting. Okay.
Mhm.
So right now we have, I think, that introduction about the tree board, I think, was somebody going to reword that or no? Why don't you look at it again and see whether you want to reword it? None of this is in stone, of course. I think number 1, we decided to agree the tree inventories, but we're going to say oversee them, right? Oversee the tree inventories.
Mhm.
2, that's going to be reworded. I just have a question mark. I think Shirley, you.
I was thinking it should maybe go under another area that we call education or something to that effect.
All right, that has to be looked at again. Number 3, we're just going to say tree board instead of specifying,
Mhm.
right? Yeah, okay. 4, tree committee again is going to, we don't specify tree warden, highway superintendent. Number 5, that's got to be reworked. I forgot how we said we were going to do that. Nicole, did you?
We were going to put in tree fund instead of grants, work with the town officials to set up a tree fund dealing with the preservation and maintenance of trees in the town.
Right, Nicole? Is that what you're?
Is that all right with you,
Yes,
Nicole?
yes.
Okay, tree fund. Maybe you could reword that. Yeah. And the 6 has to be educational. You're going to work on that, Shirley.
Mhm.
7, promote Arbor Day and Tree City. We can reword that. I see, they considered the creation of the tree farm. I mean, I see leaving it the way it is. I mean, the word consider doesn't mean we're promoting it or anything, just consider.
Mhm.
And 9, let me talk to Michael first about that. And 10, we're talking about a forestry department, period. Right, Paul? Not
Correct.
under. All right. Josh, did you take any of this down?
Yep, and we have the recording.
Whoa, this is good. Wow, this is amazing. You know, I was on the planning board in the 1980s, ladies and gentlemen, and this was nothing like this. You have no idea. In that hot, steamy academy building with no air, period. And anyway, all right. So next week, what are we leaving out? What are we leaving out besides? We have the introduction to require responsibilities. We should decide on how the board makes decisions. It may be simple majority. But that has to be decided too.
Good.
And if it's a simple majority, and it goes back to what I brought up before, the idea of the size of the board, because the simple majority means a quorum. If you have 8 people, that means you need 5 people to vote.
I don't think that's unreasonable. Do you?
It can be.
Well, we
Just think about that. You don't have to decide that now.
Is this for the future tree board or is this for our ability to?
No, the future tree board. We're in ad hoc right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm. What about the collaboration of the tree committee with other committees? Is that what we were talking about when we said we need to consolidate all the regulations that currently
No.
exist in the different boards, like the planning board and so on?
Well, in a sense, we sort of have that in theory anyway right now, Shirley. In other words, I know the planning board, it sort of fell apart, would ask one member to be the advisory person to other boards. So we have somebody on the CPC, for instance, it's who's a voting member, and I'm, in theory, I was voted to be the representative to the tree board.
Mhm.
So there is that connection. I mean, it's not official, but Michael hasn't mandated it or anything like that. Boards just do that. But
I think we need something more conclusive. And one of the thoughts was that we consolidate into one location, not one committee's responsibility, but into one area, all of the rules and regulations that each of these separate boards and committees have regarding trees.
oh yeah, I think you mentioned that before. I think that's a good idea. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, on that, but that's still Michael's responsibility. I mean, it's not, we can't do that. We don't have the power to do that. But I mean, we can recommend that happen. Yeah, but he's got to do it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Next meeting. 2 o'clock is good for you guys?
Works.
Mhm.
Okay. When do you want to do it? July 4th? No, just joking.
The 5th is Tuesday, but I think that might be a little too close to the holiday, right?
How about, yeah, do you want to do, let's see, do you want to do, how about the 7th of July, that Thursday? Is that a bad day? Or no, you want Tuesdays all the time?
I'm on vacation from tomorrow through next Thursday, so I don't think I'm gonna be able to be available on the 7th.
How
How
about if
about,
we wait until the 12th, 2 weeks from today?
all right, 12th?
Is that all right? All right with you, Paul?
I'm going to be in Springfield for a day-long workshop for work.
How about the 13th?
Yep, I can do that.
Paul, can you do the 13th of July?
No,
What?
I'm just checking. Sorry. I got two calendars I'm going back and forth with. The 13th looks okay as of now.
2 o'clock?
That's fine with me.
2 o'clock, 13th, I better check myself. I've got to draw blood on the 13th, that's okay.
Oh,
Do it after our meeting.
don't faint during our meeting.
Yeah, no, they don't take very much. All right, but let's in the meantime.
2 o'clock is all right?
2 o'clock, yeah, 2 o'clock on the 13th of July.
Okay.
And it would be good if we can set a deadline that we finalize this maybe with one more meeting after the 13th. So we don't have to meet all the time, and I can start annoying Michael with, to get this thing moving. In other words, if we come up, if we can sort of finalize what we talked about today, and think about what we're missing, and have another meeting to try to throw it all together, then we should be done. No?
Yeah.
When are you going to start the search for a landscape architect and an arborist and a?
We can't do anything until this is approved.
Oh,
It's got to go in the admin code. Michael's got to write this up. He's got to send it to the council. And we can't do a thing until, can't jump the gun here. Nothing. We are an ad hoc committee that has no power other than doing what we're doing right now.
All right, for that meeting on Wednesday, the 13th, I'll come through with an educational component for this tree board.
Yeah.
And list all of the things that I think might be included in an educational component.
Okay.
So I might be robbing Peter in order to pay
Fine.
Paul.
Yep.
All
And
right.
and just also think if we're missing anything. Look at some of the other regs.
Well, yes, and looking at other regs would be helpful. I brought up the fact that there are pieces of property that belong to or are used for different things here in town that we haven't decided where they fit in terms of trees, like the historical cemeteries. Do we just overlook that and let it go ahead as it's been in the past, or do we
Yeah.
have some input into that?
Okay. Yep.
So I think that needs to be brought up next meeting.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. You realize we're an ad hoc committee that Michael created. And it's the fact that Josh sends out the official agenda and link. We are an official board, which means that I guess in theory, we are not supposed to decide things through email. That it has to be a quorum of if you hit it, if 3 people, well, I don't know how many people we have on this committee, but if, you know, a majority of this ad hoc committee discusses things email, that's considered illegal because the public's not involved. The public right now is Pat Neary, but that's okay. So if you have ideas, just send an email out with, you know, if you have for instance, on any of those 10 points, you think it should be reworded so we can all look at it. Okay.
Ray, if you want, you can have everybody send it to me and then I can forward it out to everybody. That way,
There
the
you
only
go.
person that's being responded to is me.
There we have the parliamentarian. Good. Very good. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. If you have something you want to send out, send it to Josh. All right. We're all set then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night, good day, good night, whatever.
Good day.
It's a nice day today. And I was out this morning at Blue Hills and it was beautiful. Plenty of trees too.
Peace.
And one mosquito. Okay, take it easy.